Hello everyone and welcome to our first flipped classroom video. It's on scientific investigations. This is SOL PS1, F, G, and K. And we're going to talk about independent and dependent variables, constants, controls, and repeated trials. Data tables are showing the independent and dependent variable we'll also discuss. And we're going to discuss the main idea here is how do we research problems or methods to investigate questions we have in the real world. So our essential question at the top of your notes is right here. Okay, how are scientific investigations conducted? Okay, and as you see anything in yellow, you'll be writing down in your paper. Okay, so this is called Cornell Notes that you guys were passed out earlier. Okay, and on one side is going to be questions, and on the other side will be the definitions and your notes. So at the very top, there's your essential question. So right here, this is a question you want to write on the left side in the column. It says, what are some parts that make up scientific investigations? So you're going to write that in the left column. Now in the right column, where it says problems, this is what we're going to write. This is our first part. And all scientific investigations start out with a problem or a question. Okay? And a scientific problem is a specific question that somebody wants to answer. So every investigation starts off with a purpose or a question. Okay? Asking good questions is very important for scientists. So if we were trying to find out the composition of the atmosphere, our question would be, what are some gases that make up the atmosphere? That would be a good question. Okay, we did one earlier with the spaghetti tower, and we did another one with the water bottle flipping, and the spinning top. And each one of them were different investigations. One was which spaghetti will hold the marshmallow the highest, thin or thick. Another one might be the top. Which top will spin the longest? And the last one I think we had for our introduction lab was the water bottle flipping, where you had 200, 300, and 400 milliliters of water. Which bottle could you flip and land the most? For our problem we're going to do in class is going to be a thumb war problem. Does the length of a thumb have an effect on the overall chances of winning a thumb wrestling match? So you guys have all done thumb wars before, and we're going to find out when you come back, does your length have any effect on how many times you might win a thumb wrestling match? The second part would be forming a hypothesis. Everyone has a prediction. And a hypothesis is a testable idea or prediction that leads to scientific investigation. It's going to describe a possible relationship between variables. So now during this part, you're going to make predictions. It has to always be written in an if, and then your independent variable, then, and then your dependent variable, and then give me a reason, because. So everything in yellow needs to be written down in your notes underneath hypothesis. Okay. I do have a good example down here, and it says, if I see lightning, there'll be thunder. Because you can't have thunder without lightning. So the lightning is the independent variable, if it strikes or doesn't strike. Okay. And then the dependent variable is your thunder. Okay. The thunder happens because of the lightning. For our thumb war investigation, you're going to write down tomorrow your predictions. What do you think is going to happen in relation to our thumb lengths and who will win? Okay, let's talk about some variables, because we briefly talked about this with the spinning top, spaghetti, and the bottle flipping. There are three main variables, and variables are just anything in the experiment or factors that can be changed. Some we change on purpose, and others we need to keep the same. So the independent variable is a variable I change. This is the variable you're going to change on purpose. Okay? So for down here I have a plant. Okay? And the independent variable would be the amount of sunlight. So if plants get more sunlight or less sunlight, I can change that. Okay? That's my independent variable. I purposely can control that. Dependent variable is what will change because of what you did. It's what we're going to measure, and that's key. So on this down here, this independent and dependent variable here, the question was how light affects plant growth. Our independent variable is how much light. The dependent variable is the growth of the plant. If it gets more light, it grows more. Less light might grow less. Okay. Constants are very, very important. Okay, and these are variables that have to stay the same throughout the entire experiment. So for the plant here, the pot would have to stay the same. The amount of water you give it, the soil, the room temperature and environment it grows in. The same type of plant. Those all are constants that need to be the same. Okay. Another part is collecting data. And this is a data table, a typical data table. And if it was my thumb length versus number of wins, going back to the thumb war, okay, the independent variable would always be on this side, on the left side, okay, thumb length. The dependent variable will be on the right side, the number of wins. Okay, so this is our data table, and you always need to organize your data when you're doing experiments so you actually can understand and have an idea of what's going on. So this is when you're going to get to test your idea. You must also have your procedures done in order to follow the experiment correctly. So you should have your procedures done as well. So tomorrow we'll talk more about the thumb war investigation. Finally, here is analysis. So after you have all your data, you completed your experiment, we're going to analyze it. And usually you analyze it using a graph, or you could use a data table, but on a graph, this is how it's laid out. The bottom here is the independent variable. This is called the x-axis. And the y-axis going up and down is the dependent variable. So if it was our thumb war lab, our thumb length would go on the bottom, and our number of wins would go on the side here. Okay. How do we draw conclusions? This is our last part, and probably one of the most important parts. It's our answer to the question at the very beginning. Scientists conclude whether the results of their investigation support the hypothesis. So after you look at all the data, you're going to need to compare the outcome with your hypothesis. And there are three main questions I want everyone to answer on their conclusions when they write their conclusions on the thumb war lab or any other lab we might do. Okay, was my hypothesis supported by the data? What were the major findings? So what did you find out? What did you think happened? Include all examples or data examples. And were there any possible sources of error that might have occurred? So in our thumb war, you're going to come up with a conclusion based off our data. Does the length of your thumb make a difference if you win or do not win? Okay. These are some quick steps here, just to recap. What are some steps to the scientific method? We have a problem or questions you're going to answer. You got to form the hypothesis, plan an investigation, identify variables, experiment and collect, interpret and analyze data, and then draw conclusions. So this is a new question up here, and I want you guys to flip over your notes and write that question on the back in the left column. Okay, we're going to go through all of these in the next couple minutes here. Okay, so what are some scientific methods? Okay, so I want you guys to go through, and I actually filled in a lot of this. So all you have to do is go through here and read through and find the blanks. So defining a problem. A specific problem is just a question that we want to try to answer. A scientist wants to try to answer. Then we form our hypothesis and make predictions. So this is describing the relationship between variables. So it has to, remember, it has to be an independent if-then statement with the independent variable, then the dependent variable. Okay, and we come up with a hypothesis and test to see if the results are supported or not supported. Okay. We plan our investigation. This is your procedure, and it has to be in a meaningful way. So once again, planning an investigation is just making sure you have all your procedures in order and all the equipment that you need as well. Okay. Identifying variables is the next part. You got to know what your independent variable is, your dependent variables. Okay, and you also have to have your hypothesis complete. So that's really important. Know all your constants as well. Then once you have all the variables, the hypothesis, your procedure all laid out, all that stuff done, then you can start collecting your data. You can actually do your experiment. And then that's where you're going to put organize all that into a data chart. And then we're going to interpret that data. And that's where you're going to take that data and put it into a graph and analyze it. And finally, you can draw your conclusions. Okay. And you want to make sure to see if the hypothesis is supported or not based off the data we just did. And if there's any mistakes, you're going to have to repeat that. Okay, our last part here at the very bottom, and I put the question in for you, is why should investigations be carried out more than once? So we have something called repeated trials, and performing the experiment at least 3 times ensures what we call reliability, how the results are accurate. If you only did it once, okay, if I only did one experiment or one thumb war wrestling, okay, then I wouldn't know if my thumb or somebody else's thumb might win because it's longer or shorter. Okay, and you don't know if it's a fluke. Maybe it's a technique. Maybe I'm better at thumb wrestling. So you want to do it as many times as you can in order to get your results in a large pool of data so it's reliable. The other type is called replication. This is when other scientists repeat a particular experiment. So if I did it by myself over and over and over again, that's repeated trials. If I had other teams or other students do it, that's replication. Okay. So all repeated trials is just the number of times you perform the experiment. You should do at least 3. Okay. All right. At the bottom, you need to write a short summary based off the notes we just talked about. Okay. I would like you guys to come in with this prepared and ready to go. This is Cornell Notes. This is how we're going to be doing our notes throughout the year. And anything in yellow or highlighted is what you need to write down. All right. Hope you enjoyed. Talk to you later. Bye.